Jim and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review films either current or classic. This week we're coming at you with not one, but two current films that we're going to be reviewing on this episode. We've got Strange World from Disney, which just came out over the holiday weekend relative to when we're recording, as well as Bones and All, which opened wide. We were able to finally see it here in Tucson. Will, I know you got to see it earlier than we did. Whoops, I just spoiled that Will's on the show this week. Oh well.
Oh no!
Oh my God!
I know.
Surprise of surprises.
And Jim's here too. So we got a lot to talk about on this episode, but you've already heard from him. But let me formally introduce them. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hi, babe.
Hi, babe. Thanks for the intro, even though we spoiled each other. That's fine. That's fine by me. At this point, we know this is a three-hander. You know, this is a threesome. It's all good. Threesome. We got two new movies to talk about. Should be pretty interesting discussion tonight. Because I think there's a bunch to talk about. We'll try to fit it all into the show, but it'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will.
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. I guess if we're just spoiling things, Brad's here too. We're gonna talk about movies. We're gonna do an outro. I don't know what we're even doing anymore.
Oh, goodness. Well, I think it's going to be a good discussion, normally is, but no discussion is complete without hearing from you, our listeners. Definitely, if you are on for the live stream, say hello in the live chat. Let us know you're here. Let us know your thoughts on the films we're going to be talking about tonight. If you are listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., we'd still love to hear from you two. You as well, not you two. I really don't want Bono banging down our door in the middle of the night for some weird reason. But you, our listeners, are always welcome. So definitely jump into the comments on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you follow the Movie Bears Podcast. Let us know what you thought of these films. Jim, Will, we have a positively stuffed episode tonight. Are you guys ready to get to it?
I'm hungry for some good content.
This could be really strange tonight. We'll see.
Oh, goodness. You guys coming in clutch with the puns about the films we're going to review. I love it, as usual. One thing we will state up front. So we're going to be reviewing both Strange World and Bones and All. We're going to do so spoiler-free for the first 10 minutes or so. So if you haven't seen the film and you're like, oh, man, I really don't want to have my experience ruined, don't worry. You can step away when we get into spoilers for a film and then come on back afterward for the second film if you're listening live. If you're listening through your favorite podcast app, you can use the show notes, the time index that's located there to skip around as needed. All of that said, we're going to kick things off by going to Disney first. So here we go. Our discussion of Strange World. All right, Jim, for anyone who may be unfamiliar with this movie, because I've heard some gripes about marketing, that is entirely possible. What is Strange World, and what were your initial thoughts? Was this something that was worth seeing in theaters, maybe waiting to stream on Disney Plus, or avoiding entirely?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a new animated feature from Disney Animation Studios, put out by Disney Production Studios. This one's called Strange World, and it's just that. It's a movie mostly about a strange world that is directed by somebody named Don Hall and Guy Guadagnino, I think is the how to pronounce the names. Those two individuals worked on a movie that we reviewed, I think, on the show, Raya and the Last Dragon. If you
Mm.
remember, we talked about that. So they both worked on that movie together, and they, Don Hall directed that, and he's directing this, and well, co-directing it with the writer of Raya and the Last Dragon. So we have Strange World. I'll read the IMDb introduction, then we'll talk a little bit more about, non-spoilers about the synopsis of the movie. The legendary Clades are a family of explorers whose differences threaten to topple their latest and most crucial mission. So this is an adventure / family movie. We have the voice talents here of Jake Gyllenhaal. We have Lucy Liu, Dennis Quaid, Gabrielle Union, um, Alan Tudyk, I think is in here somewhere.
Mhm.
So yeah, we got a pretty good cast. Some new names. Jabuki Young White is one of the main characters here, who voices one of the Clade clan, Ethan, and we'll talk about that character, I'm sure. So we went to see this. We had seen trailers for this, so we knew this movie was coming out, and went to see it. It looked, I'd say, mildly interesting, and I think that's kind of the way I came away from the movie. Actually, was that this movie was mildly interesting. It was one of those movies where it had a lot of really good elements, I think, or made a lot of great efforts in some areas, like things like trying to have a message about family, trying to have a message about our world and our environment, trying to have a message about acceptance, of people and people of diverse backgrounds and whatnot. I think it had a lot of those things in the bag. I'm just not sure this movie supported all that with something that in the end was like, oh wow, that was a great ride. I think it had some cool animation stuff going on that was really good. But like I said, for some reason, it just didn't. I think maybe the bucket was too full, like with too many ideas, and it really couldn't give enough emphasis to anyone to really resonate with me. So I'm pretty wishy-washy on this film in the end. I want to see how you guys feel about it, and it's too bad because I think this is a film that families could go see together and get something out of it other than just a family adventure. I think, like I said, there's some cool. This movie tries to do some cool things. I want message is such a strong word, but I think it has some ideas in here that I think might click with some people. It just didn't carry it far enough for me. So I am of the opinion that, like, unfortunately, like a lot of people, you probably want to wait till this one streams on Disney Plus.
All right. So we've got to wait until Disney Plus recommend.
That's where I am.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us your initial thoughts, babe. Always appreciate hearing what you have to think. Will, how about for you? Was this landing in the same way? Did it hit you differently? Where are you coming from?
So for starters, I really appreciate that Disney here is looking at sort of digging into another part of its history, right? We always talk, you talk about the different eras of Disney, the golden era, the silver era, the Renaissance. There was also a short era where there were some movies that were way better than I think we realized at the time. Things like, the Atlantis, the Lost Empire, and Treasure Planet. These sort of like adventure style movies that were coming out, and this definitely feels like the kind of the new version of one of those, and I appreciate the hell out of that. And I appreciated seeing the way that these characters inhabited this world. You mentioned some diversity here. I like that it exists in a way that and I think I would rather not bury this point because I think this is a good point for our audience to know. There's a queer lead in this. And I think what's so nice about it is it's not the source of like a queer trauma story. It's just an aspect of who he is, but not in a way that's like brushed into the background. I thought that was cool. And I want more of that. I want more
Right.
upfront queer protagonists who don't have
That
to
are-
wear their queerness as like trauma. What we do
and
have
that was normalized, and that wasn't. I didn't bury that lead because I felt like it should be buried. I definitely wanted
Right.
to talk about it. It's just that I don't know. For somebody going into the movie, that might be could be a nice surprise. Maybe, I don't know.
It could be, but I think that I think there's people who are in our audience who want to see
Would
that type
wanna-
of content and
yeah.
want to see that and might
Might
skip
make a
this one
difference.
otherwise. So it's
Yeah.
one of those, like, I think that should be on the 10, at least for the group we talk about. That's why I didn't want to wait till spoilers on that. But aside from that, I do I ended up mostly positive, but still a little mixed, like you, Jim. I think that all of the individual elements of this movie, this felt like a cruise in some ways, in that all of the different like ports of destination were amazing and fun, and I enjoyed each of the individual characters by themselves, and each of the the way that the characters and their generational trauma and the environmental issues, the exploration of this world, the whiz bang adventure, all of those different things, when looked at by themselves, are really good. This is a well animated, interesting movie. But when I look at all of it as a whole, there's something missing, and I don't know what that is. And that's the frustrating thing, because I can't say that, like, oh, the story was rough or the characters were bad or the animation was bad. None of those things really exist. But at the same time, for a movie that I came out of like pretty positive, as we were sitting down to record tonight, I had to remind myself, like, what are we talking about tonight? Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah, that
Strange
movie.
World. Yeah, it didn't like stick in my brain and like carry me through the weekend the way a lot of these movies do. There's gonna be a lot to talk about in the spoiler section, and I'm really excited about that. But this one's, if you want that representation, go see it. I think that's huge. But aside, and if you're the big Disney fan, go see it. I think you could do a lot worse at the movies, but at the same time, if someone were to say, "Nah, this is I'm a little tapped on theater visits right now. I want a Disney Plus this one." I totally get that one. This isn't one that I would stump for, that you've got to go see right now.
All right. So see it eventually if you want to, but don't feel like you have to run out to the theater.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Will, it's always a delight to hear your scintillating sentimentality about these kinds of movies, especially when it comes to Disney. Something that you kind of hit on that I want to circle back to was sort of that late 90s, early 2000s era of Disney films that were coming out,
Yeah.
where it wasn't necessarily like a fairy tale story turned into a Disney movie, right? It was more of the action adventure kind of films, Treasure Planet and Atlantis and films like that. I totally agree with you. This feels very, very much in line with those films. And I think those films are fine, and I think this film is fine, but this film definitely, like those movies, didn't really reach out and like grab me by the lapels, shake me, and make me feel a lot of things. I enjoyed the ride for what it was. There were some very cool visuals. I loved having a queer lead. I liked seeing sort of the family dynamics that were on display. I think the movie makes a misstep in doubling down on a certain family dynamic. Jim, I see you burgeoning to talk about it. I'm sure we'll get to it in spoilers. But overall, it was fine. Put that on the movie poster if you want to. Strange World, it was fine. I do like some of the cast members that we got here. Alan Tudyk, of course, was here very briefly, but Lucy Liu, I have loved her since the Ally McBeal days. I don't know if you guys ever watched that show, but
Oh yeah.
that was one of her beginning roles. She was fantastic. Gabrielle Union was fantastic here as the mom. Dennis Quaid, Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know if anybody mentioned Jake yet. I don't think so, but I appreciated his performance.
Yeah.
The only thing is he's got one of those voices that like I instantly recognize as Jake Gyllenhaal. So it kind of can take you out of the movie a little bit because it's like, oh, I've seen him like almost kill somebody
The-
that's like chained up in a shower. But he's in this Disney movie. Okay, cool. It's fine. Yeah.
That was not a
And
Disney movie. I don't
yeah,
think.
yeah. That's not a spoiler for the first third of this movie. You know,
Yeah, no, it's totally not. So I want to save the bulk of the talk for spoilers. So I think I'll just wrap up my time and say um, there aren't a lot of like animated kid friendly things to go see right now. I do give Disney props for kind of coming up with an IP that isn't another sequel. It's not a live action remake of something. It's kind of a new thing. So definitely I see you kind of shaking your head, Jim.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a new thing. I think I give them credit for trying to be, I want to say original, but this does lean on some of the things, the properties we talked about, right?
It
The ones
does.
you talked about from the 90s. And I'm going to tell you that it leans on properties even like 20, 30 years before
Oh yeah.
that. Like with
Yeah.
you guys ever seen Fantastic Voyage where they
Right.
shrink down
Yeah.
this group of
let's
explorers and they go into the body? Like
Yeah,
that's
well, I'm sure we'll talk more about that in spoilers. But anyway, just to finish up with what I was saying, I think this is definitely worth a watch right now if you're looking for something to go out and see in theaters. If you're missing that movie magic, see this on a big screen. See this with a great sound system. It's not the best Disney movie out there, but there were kids in our showing who seemed to enjoy it. So hopefully you will too. All right, that's it. I'm done talking for now. Jim, Will, we have a whole nother movie to talk about. So how do you feel about moving things
Yeah.
right along to spoilers?
hey,
Yeah.
let's go explore this strange world.
let's figure out what this thing's all about.
All right, sounds like a plan to me. Real quick, Thomas Gladow is here. Hey, Tom.
Hey Tom.
He says, "Hi guys,
Hi,
is it
Tom.
me?
Thanks for
Is it
coming.
me or were Is it me or were these movies the most non-Thanksgiving week movies released?" That may come up again when we get to Bones and All, Tom. But I think this one was fine for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Well, and last year or 2 years ago, whenever Knives Out was a Thanksgiving movie, and it got Glass Onion got its 1 week follow up there, so that was sort of nice to see that maybe there's like a tradition there. But yeah, I think we'll get to that when we get to some of these others. It does feel like a weird set of releases.
That's a whole nother discussion. Like what makes a Thanksgiving movie?
Ooh.
It's almost like it's like making a playlist for music. Like, what do I put on a playlist for Thanksgiving? I have no freaking idea. There's a
Ooh.
gazillion Christmas songs, but we struggle to come up with Thanksgiving.
Right.
That would be a fun chat.
It's like
Yeah.
trains, planes, and automobiles and Uncle Buck, basically.
Yeah.
And Krisha.
Krisha on the list, but
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, we're really having to like dig deep now.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of digging deep, it is time to dig deep into Strange World. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, we do have several folks hanging out with us live. We hate to say adieu to you, but if you have not seen Strange World and you don't want to be spoiled, now's your time to step away for about the next 15 minutes and then come on back for our Bones and All discussion.
Or if you don't mind
Spoilers.
being spoiled.
Yes, absolutely. Or if you don't mind being spoiled. Spoilers are officially fair game. Knock it out of the park, guys. Where do you want to start?
I think we should start with Jim. You were teetering next to a Fantastic Voyage reference. Want to start there?
In terms of movies that it reminded me of, you guys brought up a couple that probably were maybe some of the ones that you remember, like from the 90s. I honestly don't remember those two titles. I mean, that you brought up. I don't remember watching them. Atlantis sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not sure Treasure Planet is something I even saw or recognized. But Fantastic Voyage is one that I was amazed at as a kid. Also, Journey to the Center of the Earth, right? That's another old science fiction-y one where a group, goes down into. So in this movie, they basically go into what they think is the Earth, right? They go into their planet I don't even think it's Earth. I don't know what it is, but they go into their planet to try to solve a mystery of what's going on with this plant that they're growing for power, or harvesting for power, but it seems to be threatened by something. So they're going on an adventure to find that. And it really had vibes of those like sci-fi adventure movies kind of running through its veins in this one. And I did dig that a little, quite a bit. The thing though that detracted for me was I don't know why they had to weigh this movie down with not one layer, but 2 layers of daddy issues. And I just I struggle with that because I think a lot of movies take it seems like lazy writing to me is to put characters in here that just we're gonna make this movie had so much more on its mind that I would have liked to explore besides the daddy issues in the family, the 2 layers of daddy issues between the Clade characters, between Jaeger and Searcher Clade, and then Ethan Clade. So I just wish that wasn't part of this movie, but unfortunately it is, and we had to deal with that. It seemed like a much bigger part of the movie than I would have preferred.
Yeah, I kind of like that this movie had this feel, even in terms of the presentation, the posters, the typography. I don't know if you guys remember those, like, and by remember, I mean they were definitely like before our time, but they, obviously exist in the mythos. And my history is like a Boy Scout as a kid. Like they had these like boys' adventure magazines. And sometimes it was like, like kids going off on adventures. Sometimes they were like, manly men adventures, like fighting off like hermit crabs with a knife on the beach and stuff like that. There are all sorts of like, just, and I liked that this captured some of that. I didn't mind the generational trauma story, to be honest, like the two family issues. I think the problem is that it had too many things going on at the same time. I think you could have still told this story. Honestly, as much as I loved the character, I think the thing that was the biggest issue for me was the Lucy Liu character. I think she's great, right? But she has this sort of like villain turn that immediately resolves in the film, and I think that wasted like sort of like emotional energy that I think could have been spent on maybe building up more of the friction in the climax between the 3 levels of Clade sons. I think that's the problem I ran into. It was building towards something, but they didn't have a good place to release. You remove Lucy Liu as a villain, or not a villain, but she is a conflicted with them for 15 minutes, and you make it maybe the Elder Clade is sort of in that role or whatever. I don't know. I think that becomes much more compelling.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you guys are saying, and Jim, I agree with you on DDD, or what, DDI, double daddy issues. Hashtag DDI. I felt like it kind of dragged things down a little bit, especially when we're stopping the action of what's going on to have daddy issues discussion, DID. But I mean, it worked in general, but I think it was just, I don't know, it was a little much for me. Will, you mentioned the Callisto character, and yeah, the movie sets this premise that they're going down here to find out what's wrong with the plants that they use for power. Their whole society is reliant on these plants. And now all of a sudden, the guy that they brought on to like save the whole world is now saying, "Oh, nope, we got to get rid of these plants. These plants are bad. They're a blight on this, organism that apparently we live on the back of." And at first, she's like, "No, no, no, we can't do that. That's bad. We need this." And then all of a sudden, she's hugging the mom on the bridge when like they get rid of the fucking plant, and I'm like, "What? What? Flag on the play?"
Yeah, it resolved way too quickly.
Yeah, it did. And I didn't really understand, I think, how we got to that conclusion piece. And then there's a scene at the end where like their big spaceship is powering all their like lights in the town, I guess with the leftover plant bulbs. maybe.
It was weird. Yeah, it
But
seemed like the movie had
yeah.
something to say there, like almost like I equated this plant that they were growing, this power thing, with kind of like fossil fuels
Oh,
versus other things of it. But it didn't explore that very much. Like I thought it was really just glossed over.
If they'd been
And
like,
again,
"Hey, here's ethanol, and you can use it to power all your shit without hurting anybody," then maybe it would have made more sense. But
so this, you guys are hitting on it. This was an environmental movie, and I think this movie sort of hid that. This was a movie where the characters realized that the only antagonist, there was no major like villain or antagonist, right? The antagonist was, they had to determine whether or not the convenience of modern day efficiency and technology was more important to them than the sustainability of the future. And so they had to make a decision that I think we have to make right now, and climate crisis and all of that too. So I think all of that I get, and I liked quite a bit. I think it was really more just for me. Again, thematically, I liked it. Character beat, narrative beat. It was just the stuff that happened in between, and how quickly things resolved from angle to angle. Like, that the Lucy Liu thing. I think the dog, like there was a point where like the dog would show up in the movie, and I would like have forgotten that the dog was doing stuff, and be suddenly reminded the dog was a character, which I love a dog in a movie. I'll take every dog in a movie.
sure.
Mm.
I love
But
animals
here,
in
this
movies.
one, this one didn't have anything to do that the little blue splat character couldn't
Right.
also do. And so again, it's just I think you're exactly right. For me, there was no one bad element of this movie. There were just so many elements that none of them had the chance to breathe the way they could have. You take one or two of those things out,
Mhm.
whatever's left, whatever combination of those things is left, you can pick and choose. We can all pick different things to take out of it. I think is a stronger film for it by just letting those things live a little bit more organically.
Mhm. Yep. I
Yeah,
agree.
I didn't really dig the Splat character. It just seemed really like generic and I don't know, just
Merchandising, Jim.
yeah, bringing like
Merchandising.
it just
Ooh, I want to merchandise you. Oh, that was cute.
yeah, give me a Splat thing that I can throw on the wall and watch it like come down the wall. I guess but like I don't know, I just didn't connect with that character. And I know that
Mhm.
again, this is a kids movie, and you've got to have some things in there that kids can kind of grasp onto. And I think Splat might have been like a cute thing. The dog was a cute thing to get after, but yeah, for me, it just didn't work. And maybe I'm just too an old fuddy duddy that doesn't, that those things don't work for. But I've seen so many Splat characters in my life, like I'm like, give me something different.
Mm.
Hey, can I tell you a
Well-
story about something that I did appreciate about this? I saw this as like a brunch time screening. So I saw it at like 10
Mhm.
o'clock on a Sunday morning. And it was me, my fiance, and then just families, just like young kids, families. Like, a couple rows over, like, there was like a really young kid with the siblings. So like the siblings were like enraptured with it. The little kid had like a little truck and would like get down on the ground and play for a little bit, and we'd get back up and watch some more. But everyone seemed to really love it. But my favorite part was I was walking out later, and there was this mother talking to their kids, and they were waiting for someone outside of the bathrooms. And the conversation was essentially like their family's like ours, and they started having a conversation about like multicultural,
Huh.
like cross-cultural families,
Mhm.
and they it's like, yeah, that's right, there's some families where the mom and the dad are from different cultures, but they come together. And I'm just letting there listening going like, holy shit, this is like a teaching moment happening right before my eyes. And I think that's what's so important about movies like this, whether or not this is your cup of tea or not. I'm a big proponent of the idea that representation does 100% matter in movies, and people always like sort of take for granted what that means, tokenizing a queer character, sprinkling in an equal number of like, black characters and Asian characters or Hispanic characters to meet some sort of invisible quota. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about giving visibility to a broad spectrum of people that matches the broad spectrum of people that exist, in this country, on this planet, and giving them a chance to see themselves, if you're a young person, see yourself in a variety of the different characters on screen. That's so fucking cool. And I love that this movie, I think the biggest thing this movie does is it gives you a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, gay, straight, every ethnicity under the sun. And it's just sort of part of the story. They're just there and everyone's just okay with that. And it's just so cool to see. So I will give this movie all the praise in the world for that. I want more and more of that.
Yeah.
In fact, I can't think of a Disney film that's done that part of it better, to be honest. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, we had a family sitting right in front of us. It looked like the wife, the husband, and at least 3, maybe 4 young kids, Brad.
4
that came in and they were all watching. I'm like, this is great, a family coming to the movie, seeing something like this. And right off the bat, we find out that one of the characters is a queer character. The son, Ethan, has a boyfriend in the film, and it's talked about. It's in a normal way in the family. Nobody's drawing attention to it. No characters are drawing any kind of weird attention to it in the movie, and I thought that was wonderful. Yeah. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh shit, is this family gonna get up and walk out? You know what I mean? Are they one of those families that didn't know anything about the movie and might find this offensive? And is that bad that I think that way? I mean, maybe I'm on Twitter too much and I see the bad side of society, right? But to this family's credit, they took it in stride. I think they enjoyed the characters and it was all good, which is awesome.
I think there's some level of assumption that goes on when we see families like this at a film, like this, that most families probably aren't hip to be gay. So it's not going to be okay. Maybe they'll take their kids, maybe they'll walk out. 70% of people in the United States, according to one of the latest polls, support gay marriage. So I think there's more families out there that are okay with the gay stuff than we probably think about. You know what I mean? I think it's great and super affirming to see these families come in, watch a movie like this that has a character like this, and it just be a thing that happened. They don't have to call special attention to it. It doesn't have to be after school special gay trauma. It can just be, here's a male character. Well, maybe even not male. I mean, they said he in the movie. I don't know, but right. Obviously it's a queer coded character, and I don't know. It is refreshing to see. That said, I did see people on Reddit who were like, we did walk out of this movie because we didn't know there was going to be a gay character, and we didn't want our kids,
and it wasn't just to be influenced. It wasn't probably necessarily a gay character. I just think it was just I don't know, maybe just a young gay character, right? It seemed like the character was, it didn't say his age, but 13, maybe 14, 15. I don't know.
Let's be honest. These people had the same issue with the reveal of the LeFou character as being gay in the Beauty and the Beast live action remake, which remember was sort of like a background reference at best at the end of the movie, and you would act in, and they acted as though they were scandalized too. So it's one of those things where it's progress comes in fits and bounds, right? It's not always smooth, it's not always easy, and there's always going to be resistors, but at the same time, the best way that you can move things forward is through representation. And I still give me queer trauma stories. I want to hear those stories. Give me stories about give me gay movies. I love those too. But also give me just normalization, representation, and just an average kids movie. Give me all of it. Give me the spectrum of it.
Yep.
Give me, and that's, I feel like that element we've been missing a little bit more of. And I'm loving seeing that here. And, for every one kid, whose parents, walked out with them, or rather whose parents went on Reddit and said they walked out with them.
Right.
Some of them probably didn't even do that. There were several others who had really good conversations, with their parents and learned something.
Right. Right. So I think,
and you can bet that the kids weren't the ones walking out. It was
exactly.
The kids are way more accepting and smarter and worldly than parents ever give them credit for, right? And it's just, yeah. But I mean, I was glad. I mean, this family, you know, watched the movie. I hope more families do watch the movie when it comes on streaming. Yeah.
Absolutely agreed. Agreed. All right, fellas. Well, it's been a great discussion on Strange World, but we do have another movie to talk about. Was there anything else you needed to get off your chest about Strange World, or are we ready to move on?
Ready to move on. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. Starting to get hungry. Let's go.
I know.
Uh-oh.
Well, we do this show during prime dinner time for us. I know it's an hour later for you, Will.
That's
Well-
all I meant, Brad. That's all I meant.
I'm sure he
Uh-huh.
meant that and not as a segue for the next film.
Oh, it's a cannibal joke. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, heads up, folks. We are going to be talking about our next film, Bones and All. Again, probably for about 10 minutes, spoiler free. So if you're like, what the fuck is this movie? I've never heard of it. Don't worry. We're going to give you the rundown of what it is and kind of what we thought. And then we'll give you a fair warning before we take things to spoiler town. Jim, Will, let's do this. Here we go. Our discussion of Bones and All. All right. So, Will, if you don't mind, set this one up for us. We mentioned a little thing called cannibalism before the jump, but tell us what this movie is, what it's about, and what were your initial thoughts?
Absolutely. So, Bones and All. It's the new film by director Luca Guadagnino. This is the guy that brought us movies like Call Me by Your Name, which I believe we all quite enjoyed here on this show. We talked quite a bit about it when that came out. The Suspiria remake, Bigger Splash. So Bones and All is sort of a coming of age romance story with a little bit of horror splashed in too, as it follows this young girl named Marin, who has sort of been bouncing around place to place with her father because she has this strange hunger, cannibalism. She has this need to eat flesh, and they've been trying to figure out how to deal with that, and it eventually gets too much and she's left wandering on her own. She eventually meets Lee, a young boy with a similar predilection, and the two of them end up forming a bond as they go on sort of a road trip through this like slice of life Americana story of two people finding themselves on the margins and also finding themselves in each other, but also finding themselves trapped by this dark hunger. This movie has everything that I need out of it. I love this movie. That's going to be the, you know, like if Strange World, the thing on the poster is like, yeah, it's fine. You know, Bones and All will say, I loved it. It's actually, it's sincerely good. Taylor Russell is the lead here in Marin, and I love her so much. She was in Waves a few years ago. Before that, or I guess before and after that, she's the lead in the escape room movies, which, you know, are fun if not good. Of course, Lee, the lead, she's across opposite is Timothy Chalamet, who is Timothy Chalamet. He doesn't need as much introduction. Mark Rylance also shows up here as the character of Sully. We'll talk more about him in spoilers, but he was one of my more interesting and one of the more engaging parts of this film to me as well. I loved just every part of this movie. These characters felt like desperately in need of one another, and I think there's something about that from a, you know, drifters finding each other style romance that I appreciate a lot. The characters, both the actors here are playing their characters with a lot of confidence. They're playing them with a lot of nuance too, you know, like they're grappling with who they are and what they feel and how they feel about themselves, because this thing, it's a lot for these young people to take on, and we get to see all of that flashing across their face multiple times as they're interacting with one another. I mean, This is a great movie. You have to be okay with your love story splashed with a good deal of bloody horror. That's not going to be for everyone, but that's okay. Not all movies are all for all people. But for me, this movie is an absolute slam dunk. This is what I want out of films. So, yay! Bring them on. Give me more like this.
All right, thanks, Will. Jim, how about for you?
Yeah, so I did know the basic premise of this movie going in. Some of it's kind of spoiled in one of the trailers, which kind of sucks because there's, the horror aspects, which is the cannibalism part, is it's one thing to know it's about cannibalism, but when you first see it happen on the screen, it's a pretty shocking moment. At least to me, it was, even though I knew that there was the possibility that something like that was going to happen when it first did happen on the screen. With it was jarring to me, and I think it's one of those moments where, like, if we were in a full theater, which we really weren't, but if we were in a full theater watching this, I'm pretty sure there would have been gasps, in the theater. And it did for me. I did like the movie overall, and I liked the mix of this horror, the balance of this horror and the relationship. Call it coming of age, but more like a road movie discovery. They're also trying to solve a bit of a mystery about one of the characters' parents, and so that part was pretty interesting. And a lot of the characters you mentioned, Sully, the Mark Rylance character, was really good in this. I do like Mark Rylance a lot. I actually, for a moment, thought he played two characters in the movie, but we'll talk about that when we get into spoilers. I like this movie more than I kind of thought I would. Timothy Chalamet is good. He's good in everything, but Taylor Russell is really the star of this movie. She's pretty amazing. Brad and I, actually, Brad noticed it first. She's like, she's Penny Robinson from Lost in Space. And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that's right. She's in the new Lost in Space series. And she's really good in that as well. I definitely am looking forward to seeing more of her. But yeah, can't wait to get into spoilers with you guys on this one.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate it. I promise this is not one of those times where I joke with you guys and pretend not to like a movie, but I really loved it. This movie was not for me. I did not like this movie at all. Part of the setup of this maybe is I'd never even heard of this movie, Will, until you mentioned it, wanting to review it. And I'd never even seen a trailer for the movie or even a poster for the movie. All I knew about this movie going in was that it was like a coming of age love story. And so I'm sitting in the theater and the first bit of cannibalism happens. And I'm like, nope, this is not for me. I don't know. It'd be the same thing if it was like a vampire movie. It just was immediately dumb to me, and I was not interested. I don't buy the chemistry between the characters at all. So watching their romance was a complete slog. And I don't know. Jim, you mentioned the mystery of what they're trying to accomplish, and we'll talk about it in spoilers, but that like becomes, incidental to other things that are going on. And I don't know. I just felt it was really silly. I knew it was by the same director who did Call Me by Your Name, and I just could not believe that someone who gave us that movie gave us this. So I'm really glad you guys enjoyed it. I hated it. I'm sorry to be that guy. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, was this not the movie for me. I'll never get those slog of a 2.5 hours back. And I'm a little angry about that.
That's a bummer. But again, the types of movies that I really like are the ones that we've said before, like not all movies are for all people. And I think that I really enjoy movies that take big swings, right? And I think when a movie takes a big swing, it's not going to connect for everyone, but it's going to really connect for some people, right? I think a movie like Strange World is probably a great one to pair with this one because I think that's quite the opposite of this one, right? That's a movie that, aside from some of those representation points we talked about, didn't take a lot of really big swings. And so it ends up being a kind of like all right for everybody. But this one here is going to be polarizing by design, and I'm cool with that. even though it's like I wish you had the same experience as I did. You know, I obviously want everyone to always see a movie. I still love it when a movie does, you know, is willing to make the swing.
To
Yeah,
finish my thoughts, I would just say this is absolutely not a recommend for me, unless you are really into like, you know, horror movies, genre films, like mushed up with love stories. If that sounds like your thing, then this may be it, but not something I would recommend.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I think that I don't know if this had been zombies, I totally would probably be on the same page as you, babe. Like I don't. Um, we've just seen so much of the zombie thing. I just think it's been done to death. But I think, and that not intended. But
Ah,
I think this one, I did kind of get some kind of visceral, demented thrill out of kind of this world and the rules by which this world operated for these characters and how they would navigate real life having this compulsion was interesting to me. So yeah, I don't want to spoil too much. So
well, maybe now is a good time to just rip off the Band-Aid, get to spoilers, and that way we can talk through some things. Are you guys on board with that?
Let's do
yeah,
it.
let's get into it.
All right, spoilers for Bones and All are officially fair game. If you continue to listen, believe me, you do so at your own peril where the plot of this movie is concerned. Definitely, if you don't care about spoilers, feel free to hang out with us and hear our spoiler-laden discussion. Where do you guys want to start?
Will, what do you think?
Well, I guess we can talk about like let's talk about the horror elements. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say one of the things, and Jim, this was really fresh in my mind because of something that you just mentioned. Why this was so fascinatingly compelling, and like yeah, in a way that like if it was just another, you know, vampires or zombies or whatever, like it may not have been. I think what was really horrific about this was like these characters didn't go through like a transformation. They didn't like go like, oh, my dark hunger's going on, and then they get all like werewolfy or whatever like that. You know, it really grounds the horror not just in what they're doing, but also in the fact that they're essentially just people who have this one horrific thing wrong with them that even they recognize. And I think that was what was so compelling for me to watch them deal with. Like it wasn't something as simple as like, okay, we got to learn the rules. Do silver bullets work? You know, can they cross, you know, running water? What about holy water? It's just, this is who these people are, and this is how they're going to live their lives. What type of life can they find? What type of life can they find together with that? That's what really got to me.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to figure out like what the story was trying to say, like with the cannibalism. Like, you know, there's these two people, they both have this same compulsion or same thing, quote unquote, wrong with them. And the movie doesn't care so much to like tell you how they became cannibals or they were just born that way. I mean, basically that's what the movie says. The dad tells the girl, you were just born this way. You started eating people like very early in life for some reason. And I was glad the movie didn't go into like an ABC of how cannibals are created or whatever. But I also wanted to know like what the movie was saying about like what was this like an allegory for something else? You know what I mean? Like some other flaw that people have, or was this simply just the director, a writer, just saying, "Hey, this is cannibalism, and it's just horror." And that's it. In the back of my mind, I'm like, what is this movie trying to say?
So horror works for me best when you can find like the allegory, the
Yeah.
you know, like the real world thing. And for me, I think what we really see here is like whatever that line is where like obsession and addiction cross, right? You know, these are people who have this addictive lifestyle, who have this lifestyle that is completely dominated by this other thing. And what I think was so I don't know, dramatic about it was, this, it obviously, in their consumption of other people, it consumed the people around them, but you also saw how much it hurt them too, their ability to
Right.
form relationships. And I think that when you're looking at an allegory for addiction and obsession, whether it be, a drug addiction or addictions for like, certain types of harmful relationships, whatever it happens to be, whatever your addiction of choice is, I think you can draw some lines to it there.
Yeah, I think, certainly in these characters were struggling with this aspect of their life. At least some of them were. The two main characters struggled with it, right? They did not embrace this thing that was wrong with them. They really, really struggled with it. I mean, they seemed to dread this part of their existence. Whereas some of the other characters had, like Sully, the two guys that we meet about halfway through the movie, or at least one of them, seem to like more revel in their cannibalism, the part of them that's cannibalistic. So that was interesting. You basically saw these people suffering with this affliction, and how that's why they were on the run. It was affecting, obviously, but they're basically just on the run all the time. They have this compulsion to eat people, and that came across to me like it was a horrible existence for them. So the only thing they found was each other, that they the only bright spot in their lives were each other.
It was nice seeing, you mentioned the two guys that they meet at one point in the film. Michael Stuhlbarg, who we saw also in Call Me by Your Name, only instead he playing a very different character instead of the dad who has some life experience to share. He was a character was on the skids himself, to the point where I kept going like, is that the same guy? No. Is that the same? No. Yeah, it's the same guy. So I always like when you see someone show
Right.
up, in someone, obviously Guadagnino likes working with him. And that's
Which
why he
one
brought him
was
back.
he?
He was the of the two.
One of them was
he
a
the one-
cannibal, and one of them was not, right?
Yeah, he was the one who was a cannibal and had the longer, stringier hair.
Yeah.
He's the one you thought was.
Yeah, he's the one I actually
yeah.
thought was a youngified version of Sully, like Mark. I thought like, oh wow, they got Mark Rylance to play both characters. That's pretty awesome. But
yeah. The other one was David Gordon Green, the director. Not the director of this movie, but like he directed the Halloween movies, for example, Halloween and Halloween Kills.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I also it was interesting to see how they I mentioned that they struggled with what their compulsion, and especially the scene where about halfway through the movie they end up or Timothy Chalamet's character ends up killing a guy at like the carnival, right?
Yeah.
And generally, like this code they try to live by, or some of them try to live by, is like they generally, I think they're trying to find people that are on the fringes, that don't have a family, as victims, right? But that doesn't always work out, and that was the case with the carnival guy, and how they struggled with that particular kill in the movie, I guess. I also want to talk about the character Sully, who we both said I think was probably one of the more interesting characters.
Yeah.
Right, because he had been a long time cannibal guy, and we meet him pretty early in the movie. Definitely a creepy vibe, right? More than probably most of the other characters. But the movie had me off balance about, like, is this guy really creepy and evil, or is he really trying to be a nice guy, and this lifestyle kind of made him this way? Really, really strange character. But I love characters like that are like you just have you so off balance watching them, you don't know which way they're gonna come from.
Yeah, I think what was so neat about the Sully character is that so he has an obsession of his own, right? You know, he becomes instantly obsessed with the Marin character. You know, like he
Right.
sees something in her. He follows her, and once he realizes that, what he thought of as a budding friendship or whatever was no longer on the table, he lashed out. If I'm going to hurt you and hurt the people around you, in my way of as my way of trying to pull you closer. And again, I think that is incredibly tragic. It's also incredibly scary. And it also makes you think about too, and I think this is an important part of it. When he does something bad towards the main characters, we feel a specific way that we also have to recognize as the way the main characters are treating everyone else in the world, as something to be consumed. And so we have to think about that and kind of what that means. And I like that too, like, having the sort of like the moral gray area with the movie, sitting at the end of it and going like, gosh, why did I feel the way I felt about this? Why was I able to empathize with these characters when they're clearly doing something monstrous? What is it about their humanity at the core of it that's still compelling? What is it that's still repulsive? Those are things that you don't have easy answers to.
Yeah.
And you ask those questions. That's again, this one stuck with, opposite of Strange World, right? Like I after seeing that one, I watched it, had a good time with it, and then I was done with it, right? And then this one I'm still thinking about and still like spending time with.
Yeah. Obviously, obviously a tragedy, right? I mean, it's tragic for these characters, the way they have to live, and it ends tragically too, in a pretty horrific way, kind of at the end.
I actually thought the end was really funny. I love you, eat me, I love you.
Nice.
I laughed out loud at that. That was hilarious.
Yeah. The Bones and All title thing did come up right at one time, but yeah, I don't know if I think it came up as like, is that like the ultimate for a cannibal is to be able to eat somebody, bones and all, or something? Will?
Yeah, it's just sort of like the utter consumption of something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts on Bones and All?
No. Other than I don't know if this is streaming, Will, or just in theaters, but
not streaming yet. But let's see. This one was this A24?
I don't remember if it was or not.
Who released this? Yeah, I don't remember who released this. Usually you can kind of like tell
MGM,
which streaming platform. Oh, MGM. Okay. So yeah, so it'll appear on, it'll probably be on like Amazon, and, or an Apple probably within the next month or so.
But yeah, you could tell pretty much 5 minutes into this movie that was going to be very polarizing, and as you could see by our reactions, it definitely was.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out with us for our discussions of Strange World and Bones and All. Hopefully you got some good juju out of those conversations. We're going to be coming at you next week with Violent Night. We're going to be kicking off the holiday season. What more could we ask for than David Harbour in a Santa suit kicking ass, I suppose. We'll see if the promise, however, lives up to what it seems like, at least from the trailer. But also want to put a bugaboo in everybody's ear. We're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary on December the 13th, relative to when we're recording. That's 2 weeks from now. We're hoping to have some special guests joining us for some fun holiday hijinks. We'll be talking about some holiday films that are near and dear to our hearts. So we hope you will join us for what Will has named our Cozy Sweater episode, or if you want to think of it as our 10-year holiday bash. We're looking forward to that show as well. And as always, thanks so much. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But thank you to everybody who tuned in this week. And hopefully you'll come on back for our discussion next week. Guys, if people want to chat between now and our next recording, let's let them know where they can do so. Jim, where can people find you?
I'm still on Twitter at JJP Out West. Those are my initials, JJP, and then Out West. That's me on Twitter, and you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right, thanks
Call
so
me
much,
by my
Will.
name right there. Yeah.
Will, how about you?
Yeah, hit me up on Instagram. I'm at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. Look for William Lindis there. You can find me on Letterboxd, where I rank and review films. Search for William Lindis on there. And look for me on TikTok at The Movie Bear. I'll see you on any of those socials.
All right, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who probably has Chub, Chaser, Bear friends in common with you. You can also find me on Letterboxd and Twitter at iBradPro. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.